Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So, I want to talk about these protests at the University of California at Berkeley. As many people know, Milo Yiannopoulos from Breitbart News was scheduled to give a speech at the university. But in response to the protests and the actions of a few individuals, that speech was canceled. People were protesting because apparently this man has made some controversial statements. And as most people know, he's affiliated with Breitbart News, a racist publication, a white supremacist publication, a sexist publication, a bigoted publication. So I understand full well why people were protesting. And I commend those who nonviolently protested against this man. I support those people. I commend those people. But what I don't support is people engaging in violence in response to speech. I don't think that that's an appropriate response. And part of me wonders if those people are agent provocateurs. An agent provocateur is someone who is planted into a movement in order to destroy the movement by engaging in criminal activity. By engaging in this activity, they encourage actual members of a movement to get involved in that criminal activity, thereby discrediting the movement, thereby causing members to be arrested, and thereby destroying the movement. So I would not be surprised if those people who were engaged in those activities were not employees or agents of the government. I wouldn't be surprised. And I heard reports about how the police presence was light, and that helped to feed the chaotic environment. And that just raises more suspicions about whether or not the whole violent nature of the protest was sparked by these agent provocateurs, especially in the light of who's in the White House right now. I mean, for goodness sakes, I mean, one of President Trump's key advisors worked for Breitbart News, works for, these alt right movements. I mean, he's a racist white supremacist. So it would not be any stretch of the imagination that somehow the government would plant people into that movement to discredit the whole movement, the whole protest movement against this Breitbart representative, Milo Yiannopoulos. So, that's one thing that I'm concerned about. And again, violence is not an appropriate response to someone exercising their free speech. Now, there's a difference between somebody exercising free speech and somebody inciting violence. There's a clear difference between the two. If someone is in your face and they are trying to incite violence, that's a completely different situation. But I think that the best response to racism, to ignorance, and bigotry is with reason and logic. Because racism and bigotry, it doesn't stand when it's confronted with logic, reason, and the truth. It can't stand. So I think that the protests were appropriate. I think that nonviolent protest is appropriate. That's an appropriate way to address this negative hate speech. And I think that people should be able to use every legal means available to them to combat racist speech, whether that's protesting, whether that's engaging in boycotts. For instance, boycotts against advertisers on racist radio programs or advertisers on racist YouTube videos or whatever. I think that that is the people's right. And I think that the people have the right to use whatever legal options are available to them to combat racist ideology, to combat it. I mean, here on YouTube, you have what are known as community guidelines for how people are supposed to conduct themselves, community guidelines about hate speech. And I think that people have a democratic right to voice their opposition to hate speech by using the means that are available here on YouTube to combat that. But I think that ultimately, you know, the best option, the best way to address hate speech is with counter arguments, with logic, reason, and common sense, and also by developing alternative platforms, by developing an alternative audience, by developing an alternative environment. I think that that is the best way to combat hate speech.